So in general, fishermen rightly say that their communities are socially backward. They lag behind many of the mainstream communities when we come to most of the social development indicators. And this is something that most parts of India, I think we recognize that. So health, education, water, sanitation, housing, social protection, all these things are very important, along with, of course, sea safety, where a lot of concern has been there, a lot of schemes have been there, but in practice the changes are still not enough. There's a considerable amount of migration in fishing. Migration from one area to other for fishing opportunities, with boats, without boats. We even have a large scale migration from east coast to west coast for fishing. So there's a considerable amount of movement of fishermen. So also movement of fisherwomen for livelihoods. People who go to distant markets now to fish than before, to buy fish, goes long distances to buy fish and to sell fish, and so on. Rights of these migrants, the problems associated with this migrant community, etc., largely been ignored. And associated with all this is this whole issue of gender. The fisheries, of course, you have a strong gender division of labor. And the women in the market chain are often weak because the markets are outside their village, which is their own terrain and where their rights are often understood, recognized by the local communities. But when they go to the cities, when they go to the distant markets, their ability to have a say on how those markets are run and how their work should be done is very weak. In some places like Bombay, we are seeing the retail trade, where the women used to be the predominant factor, is getting masculinized, along with potentially the long-term threat of supermarkets selling fish. Unless this trade is modernized and the women's livelihood is also strengthened to cater to the new needs, we will find that they are getting wiped out because they are no more they are unable to compete. And of course, very basic facilities, toilets, infrastructure, quality, maintenance of quality, all that is very much lacking. While welfare schemes are also welcome, welfare is often not a good enough substitute for rights. And there is also a critique of the traditional institutions in fisheries. The traditional fishermen organizations or the village community organizations are traditionally all male or completely male dominated. Their ability to have a greater voice in their own communities is also seen as a problem. And of course, the women cooperative, for their economic activities, the cooperative action is still very weak. Disaster management has been very much talked about. So I think the global warming, sea level rise, all these issues point to the fact that the fishing community is going to be the most vulnerable, is going to be the most hit. So strengthening the disaster management work on the coast, disaster resilience on the coast, is obviously a high priority and needs to be done. And there, where the people are saying is, where are we in the planning, where are we in the implementation of all this? So overall, we need to work on an enabling environment which will strengthen the small-scale fisheries sector. One, it requires that the small-scale fishermen be involved in the preparation of development plans, and that there is policy coherence to address small-scale fisheries. You can have one department for small-scale fishermen and some set of officials and some budget, but you can undermine them from another side because you are supporting bigger fishermen to undermine them. You are supporting industries to undermine the small-scale fishermen. So policy coherence is perhaps more important than allocating money or doing certain very specific things. Implementation of monitoring, because we are now looking at these guidelines as something which is well beyond the scope of the fisheries. So how do we coordinate and how do we achieve that, given that we are often governance in India is largely silo based and very much fragmented. And in a sense, this meeting is an important step towards that, when we are trying to bring different stakeholders across the different departments to come and talk. There is also gaps in law, like the absence of a law governing the EEZ, because today quite a lot of even the small fishermen are going beyond 12 nautical miles. Only the foreign vessels are governed, but not Indian flag vessels are not necessarily today having any clear regime as to what they can do and what they should not do. Of course, since this is a human rights based instrument, the need to look at how these existing laws are faring when you apply the human rights lens to them. Every time we have a fisherman meeting, fishermen always feel that they are neglected and the farmers are better taken care of. It is debatable, but the spirit is people feel that the state does not take enough care for fishermen, that they are marginal socially and politically. So these are probably the most important things that came up from all these consultations, and I think this will help us to keep in mind the various things that we need to work on as we go towards the implementation of the guideline. Thank you very much.